Continue our fair and balanced debate on the new Arizona law that requires cops to stop and card anyone they suspect may be here illegally. Joining me now, the mayor of Phoenix, who says the new law is unconstitutional on its face. Mayor Phil Gordon joins us. He says he'll file a federal lawsuit before the next week is out to get the bill blocked. We're also joined by one of the most vocal supporters of legislation of this sort, Republican Steve King of Iowa, ranking member of the Subcommittee on Immigration, Citizenship, Refugees, Border Security, and International Law. The Congressman is coming to us tonight from neighboring Omaha, Nebraska. Congressman, you first. Isn't this ironically going to give incentive and impetus to a new congressional effort to pass comprehensive immigration reform?
Well, Geraldo, it may perhaps do that, but as I see this in Arizona, and the people there know the situation on the ground, but it's gotten desperate in Arizona, and they've had to step up and put a foundation underneath to support the inactivity of the federal government in enforcing immigration law. So I think the safety of American citizens and the safety of the people in Arizona is paramount to the political question here. Sometimes we have to take a risk, and I would expect that they will try to move some kind of an immigration reform legislation, and I call it comprehensive amnesty. It will be a very difficult political fight, and the president has proven that he will do unpopular things, and they will risk their congressional seats for things like cap and trade and Obamacare and now comprehensive amnesty. I think we have a fight on our hands, Geraldo.
Mayor Gordon, what about what the congressman says? Obviously, that was the incentive, the motivation, at least declared, the state of civic lack of safety and security, law and order deteriorating, 500,000 illegals in the state, and yet you're against this bill and you're vowing to have it declared unconstitutional if you can.
Well, Gerardo, first, let's understand that everybody does want a reform in immigration. The system's broken. You got to wait 20 years to come into this country to either work or a path to citizenship. And that's no immigration bill. And secondly, we want a secure border. But to say that officers and border agents and DEA aren't doing anything is just a travesty. Just last week, the ATF and DEA and the Phoenix police busted an international smuggling ring of smugglers and criminals and drug dealers that brought people in and arrested over 49 syndicate leaders. Now, that's just last week alone. But what we're talking about is a bill that tramples civil rights, and hopefully even the congressman, if he will read this bill and sees that it does trample civil rights, not just immigrants, but citizens. You have to have a license, and former Congressman J.D. Hayworth was absolutely wrong. It doesn't require that a crime be committed. That was the policy in Arizona and Phoenix. Now, if anyone has an officer reasonable suspicion, then the burden of innocence is switched. You have to have a valid Arizona ID. And what about seniors that don't drive, or children that aren't eligible, or people coming in from another state that don't have ID photos of driver's license that qualify? This is just unconstitutional on its face. It's morally wrong, and it is about racial profiling, and it has to stop.
Congressman King, isn't it obviously going to require racial profiling? I mean, they're not going to stop the Swedes or the Norwegians. I mean, who are they going to stop? Really, what is reasonable suspicion? Is it, walking with mustard? What is it? And what if the kid is a 13-year-old, and what 13-year-olds carry anything other than their school ID? It doesn't say whether they're here illegally or legally. I mean, there are some real grave difficulties, are there not, Congressman King?
Well, Geraldo, what happens that I wrote a drug testing bill in Iowa that has reasonable suspicion written into it. And I've not compared the definitions of reasonable suspicion, the Arizona law, to the one in Iowa. But even there, we didn't ask law enforcement officers. We let employers train a professional for the definition of reasonable suspicion. Since 1998, when that law was passed, we haven't had any problem with the reasonable suspicion. The part about profiling, the courts have ruled that profiling is all right as long as it isn't the sole criterion that's used when they're evaluating. Profiling has been an essential component of law enforcement since the beginning of law enforcement. It's a legitimate approach. And if we're going to focus on profiling as if using it as a component of our overall reasonable suspicion and throwing out reasonable suspicion, I think that's wrong. Although I do think that the governor has made a very strong statement about how she will ensure that the law enforcement officers are completely trained in this. And I just ask people, take a deep breath. We should all be for supporting the law, the rule of law, and the intent of the law. And we should find out how this is going to be applied in Arizona before people go off the deep end on this.
Brief rebuttal from the mayor before we're out of time.
Geraldo, the problem, Congressman, is, number one, there is no definition. Congressman, there is no definition, number one. Number two, anybody in the state can sue if they feel any government, except the state, which excluded itself if it was that important, can sue to have it enforced. And thirdly, this is about a crime. It's not about an employer testing for drugs. This is about
to go, gents.
legal residency.
Thank you both. Got to go. We'll be right back.